Welcome to The Explainer. We're tackling a massive question today. What is reality, really? We'll start with a super popular theory that says our world is basically just a user interface. And then we're going to look at a new framework that asks a pretty profound question. What's the point of it all?
Okay, so let's kick things off with this wild idea from cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman. It's really caught on, and for good reason. The basic gist, what you're seeing right now, it isn't real. Hoffman's work points to evolution essentially pulling the wool over our eyes. We didn't get eyeballs to see the truth of the universe. We got them simply to survive. So, all of Hoffman's math leads him to this, his interface theory. And he argues that the world we perceive is basically a VR headset. Think about the icons on your computer desktop. They're useful, right? You click the little file icon, but that icon isn't the reality of the computer's circuits and code. Not even close. Hoffman says it's the same for us. A snake, a train, they're just icons, simplified for us so we can make super quick survival-based decisions. Like, don't get bitten or definitely get off the tracks. So here's our game plan. We'll start with this reality as a headset idea. Then we'll ask, what's the game's purpose? We'll get into something called the governance operating system and an equation for meaning. We'll check out the evidence for this whole system and wrap up with what it all means for life beyond the game. All right, first section, reality is a headset. So let's really dig into this foundational idea. If everything you're seeing, hearing, and touching right now, if space-time itself is just a VR headset, what does that actually mean for us? Hoffman's model has a name, conscious realism. And this is where it gets really trippy. It says that consciousness doesn't come from the brain. No, it's the other way around. Consciousness is the fundamental reality, and it actually creates your brain and your body to be its avatar, its way of interacting with this interface. So what's the goal of this game we're all playing? It's simple. Fitness. Just stay alive long enough to pass on your genes. That's it. The whole point is survival. Okay, so what's the game's purpose? See, that's where the survival-only model starts to run into some problems. It just leaves so much of what it means to be human completely unexplained. Just think about it for a second. If reality is just a headset for survival, then why do we value things like meaning, morality, and growth, sometimes more than life itself? Human history and even our own daily lives are filled with stories of people choosing honor or truth or love over their own safety. A pure survival model just can't really account for that drive, can it? Why bother building a complex, beautiful civilization if the only objective is don't die? And that brings us to the next big idea, the governance operating system. This is where a newer framework comes into play. It's called the Consciousness Governance Mathematical Model, or CGMM for short. And it really builds on Hoffman's work. It takes his model that describes what reality is and gives it an operational purpose. It explains why it's this way. Here's the big shift in perspective that CGMM proposes. The goal isn't survival, it's development. So yeah, it agrees we're in a simulation, but it says the main point isn't just to keep your avatar walking around. The simulation is actually a school, a training ground. It's specifically designed for your cognitive and moral growth. Survival? That's just the basic requirement to stay enrolled in the class. The model calls this reality a nafs-centric incubator. Now, nafs is an old term for the self, your core consciousness. So what this theory is saying is that the entire universe is a customized, procedurally generated incubator designed specifically for you. Your reality is a personalized curriculum. Every single thing that happens, every challenge you face, is basically a lesson tailored to test and grow your consciousness. Wild, right? All right, now for what I think is one of the most fascinating parts, the equation for meaning. This is where CGMM goes from just a cool theory to actual mathematics. It's proposing a physics of morality with its own core formula that literally defines what purpose is, mathematically. And here it is, the destiny equation. E equals UD squared. Looks simple enough, right? But it is incredibly profound. What it's describing is nothing less than how we convert the raw, physical stuff of our lives into something with real, eternal, meaningful value. So let's break down what U, D, and E actually stand for. Okay, so let's look at the pieces. U is for universe, or utility. Think of this as all the physical stuff you have to work with. Your money, your time, your skills, even your physical body. It's your raw material. Then you have Deen, which stands for Deen, or established order. This is the moral constant, your governance protocol. It's the how, the rules, roles, and rights you operate by.
And finally, E is for essence. This is the output, the eternal value, wisdom, growth, your moral legacy. The key here, and this is absolutely critical, is that D is squared. That means even a small improvement in your moral governance, your principles, has an exponential impact on the meaning you produce.
And this comparison really hits the point home. You've got Einstein's famous E equals mc squared on one side. That's the physics of matter. It's about how mass converts into a burst of energy, and the observer is basically just a passive camera watching it happen. But on the other side, you have E equals UD squared. This is the physics of morality. It's about how resources are converted into wisdom. And the huge difference? The observer isn't passive at all. You are an active steward. Your choices are what drive the entire equation. Okay, so you might be thinking, this is a cool idea, but is it just philosophy? Where's the proof? Well, that's the thing. CGMM is designed to be more than just a description of what is. It's an operational model, which means it should make testable predictions, and it does, across a bunch of different fields.
You can actually use this model as a kind of forensic tool to look back at history. Let's call these historical crash tests. Think about the ancient pharaohs. They had massive wealth and armies, a huge U value. But the governance, the D, was all about tyranny and ego, a very low D. And what was the result? Total systemic collapse. The same pattern holds for the 2008 financial crisis. You had unbelievable amounts of capital, high U, but practically no governance to guide it, low D. The results, the market just dissolved. The equation holds up. High resources without a strong moral order just leads to chaos and decay.
And it gets even more concrete in neuroscience. The model points to a metric called the agency delta. Now, this comes from some really interesting experiments on something called intentional binding. It's basically this. When you feel you are in control of your actions, your brain actually perceives the time between your action and its result as being shorter. So by measuring this time gap, we can get a real number, a quantifiable metric for your sense of agency. This suggests a direct, testable link between your moral alignment and how your brain processes time and control.
We can even test this stuff in computer simulations. Imagine you create two types of systems. The first are ease systems. They're all about speed and getting the quickest output, optimized for pure survival. The second are friction systems. They force the agent to slow down, to verify things, to make a conscious choice. And when you run the numbers, the results are just undeniable. The systems with that built-in friction are way more likely to survive and correct their own errors. It's hard proof that struggle and choice aren't bugs, they're features necessary for growth.
So that brings us to our final section, life beyond the game. Let's see how all of this comes together to give us a radically different picture of life, death, and what comes next.
So here's the bottom line. The difference between these two models is just profound. In Hoffman's model, death is basically game over. You just take off the headset. That's it. But in the CGMM framework, reality is a continuum. Your cognitive development, that essence you created with your choices, it all persists. This life is just one chapter, not the whole book. This idea completely reframes why we're even here. I mean, why have a physical universe at all? CGMM's answer is that it's a language school. The entire physical world, light, gravity, growth, decay, all of it was designed to be the vocabulary. These are the words we need to learn so that we, the nafs, or the self, can learn how to communicate with our creator about eternal truths. We're not just here to survive, we're here to become fluent in the language of reality for a conversation that goes on long after we leave this place. So I want to leave you with this final thought. What if life isn't a game of survival, but a curriculum for your soul? If we accept that we're in some kind of simulation, maybe the point isn't just to get to the end without dying. Maybe the point is to learn. If this reality is a school, custom-built just for you, then the most important question you can ask isn't, how do I survive? It's, what am I here to learn?